Once upon a time, he was called the Total Package. A man sculpted like a Greek god, destined to become the face of professional wrestling. But behind the lights, the fame, and the adoring fans, was a man fighting battles the world never saw. He had it all: the looks, the body, the fame, and the opportunities others could only dream of. Yet somewhere along the way, it all began to crumble. From sold-out arenas to lonely hospital beds, from championship gold to cold handcuffs. Lex Luger's story is not just about fame. It's about the price of losing control and the heavy cost of chasing perfection. This is not the story of a villain, nor a hero. It's the story of a man, broken by his own reflection. At one point, he stood shoulder to shoulder with the biggest icons of wrestling history. But while others found legacy, Lex found loss. His story asks a painful question: how does someone with everything end up with nothing? The sad journey of Lex Luger. To understand Lex Luger, we must return to where it all began. Long before the world knew him as Lex Luger, he was Larry Fall, a kid from Buffalo, New York. Tall, strong, and obsessed with perfection. His dream wasn't wrestling, not yet. It was football, the great American game. Larry Fall, Buffalo, New York. In the late 1970s, Fall played for the Miami Hurricanes, chasing glory on the gridiron. His physical strength and determination were unmatched. He would go on to play professionally, in the Canadian Football League, and even briefly in the NFL. But injuries, inconsistency, and fate had other plans. Larry's football career ended before it truly began. He had the body of a champion, but no arena left to conquer. End of the first dream. The 1980s were an age of muscle and excess. Arnold Schwarzenegger was Hollywood's god, and gyms were temples of transformation. It was here, among iron and mirrors, that Larry Fall reinvented himself into something larger than life. He took the name Lex Luger, inspired by the comic book villain Lex Luthor. It was perfect, powerful, ruthless, unforgettable. Birth of Lex Luger. In 1985, Lex Luger entered the wrestling world through Jim Crockett Promotions, the company that would one day become WCW. Within months, he was billed as the next big superstar. He wasn't just another wrestler. He looked like the future. Tall, blonde, carved out of stone. In an era where image meant everything, Lex Luger was professional wrestling's ideal. But beneath the surface, Luger struggled with identity. Was he truly living his dream? Or just becoming the dream others wanted him to be? He was adored by fans, envied by peers, and yet, even at the height of his rise, something inside him remained empty. Soon, Lex Luger would discover that the higher you climb, the lonelier it becomes. Coming up, the beginning of the fall. The wrestling world is a brutal business. For every star that shines under the spotlight, there are countless others burning in silence. And as Lex Luger began his climb, he learned quickly: fame in wrestling isn't earned easily, it's taken. Wrestling, survival of the flashiest. In 1987, Luger joined the Four Horsemen, wrestling's most powerful faction, led by the legendary Ric Flair. For Lex, it was a shortcut to the top, or so he thought. Flair was the established king. Lex was the crown prince waiting for his turn. But in the wrestling world, power is never given. It's fought for, backstage and beyond. Fans loved his physique, promoters loved his look. But critics, they saw through it. They said Lex Luger was all body, no heart. They said he couldn't wrestle. They said he couldn't talk. They said he didn't feel it. All body, no soul. And yet, every night, he went out there, fighting not just his opponents, but his own doubts. Because deep down, he wanted to belong. He wanted to prove he was more than a bodybuilder pretending to be a wrestler. When Lex finally faced Ric Flair for the World Championship, it was more than a title match. It was validation. It was his shot to prove everyone wrong. And that night, he nearly did. But destiny had other plans. Luger never won that match. The title stayed with Flair. The message was clear: the business still didn't trust him. Close. But never chosen. Still, fans believed. They saw potential. The next Hogan, the next Flair. And promoters saw money. Lex Luger became a marketing dream, even if the man himself felt hollow inside. Success was coming fast, but so was the darkness. For behind the muscles, Lex was hiding demons, ego, temptation, and a growing dependence that would soon consume everything. The rise had begun, but the higher he went, the harder he would fall. Next, the rise, stardom, and the American dream. By the early 1990s, Lex Luger had become one of wrestling's biggest stars. His presence alone could electrify an arena. With his chiseled frame and confident swagger, he looked like the next face of the business, and everyone knew it. Lex Luger, the total package. In WCW, Luger found gold, winning the United States Championship multiple times and cementing himself as a main event name. He wasn't just the next big thing anymore, he was the guy. But in 1993, Vince McMahon saw something more, a void left behind by Hulk Hogan's departure. America needed a new hero, and Vince believed he had found him in Lex Luger. On July 4, 1993, Lex Luger did the impossible. He body-slammed the 550-pound Yokozuna aboard the USS Intrepid. In that moment, he became the symbol of American pride, the man chosen to carry the torch of a generation. The All-American Lex Express begins. Vince launched a campaign like never before, the Lex Express. A red, white, and blue bus carrying Luger across America. He was marketed as the new All-American hero, a clean-cut, muscle-bound savior of wrestling. At SummerSlam 1993, the stage was set. Lex was destined to defeat Yokozuna and capture the WWE Championship, the moment that would define his legacy. But then, the story took a strange turn. He won the match, but not the title. Despite months of build-up, parades, and promises, Lex Luger did not become champion that night. It was a hollow victory. The dream that never delivered. Backstage, the celebration felt forced. The fans cheered, but the spark was gone. The man who was supposed to be the next icon had just missed his moment, and deep down, Lex knew it. The Lex Express rolled to a stop. The hype faded, and within months, the All-American hero vanished from the spotlight. Vince moved on. The fans moved on. And Lex was left wondering where it all went wrong. For the first time, Lex Luger faced the truth. Fame can't fill the emptiness inside. And soon, that emptiness would lead him down a road of pain, excess, and tragedy. Next, the fall, ego, addiction, and the breaking point. By the mid-1990s, the dream had begun to crack. Lex Luger, once America's golden hero, was now a man searching for purpose. The fame, the fortune, none of it could quiet the storm inside. When the lights go out, after leaving the WWF, Luger returned to WCW, reuniting with Sting and the stars of his past. To fans, it was a comeback. To Lex, it was just survival. But behind the muscles, the charm, and the confidence, Lex was drowning. The man who once preached discipline had fallen prey to the temptations of the road. Alcohol, pills, steroids, the endless travel, the injuries, the pressure. It all took its toll. And Lex, like many of his generation, began to self-medicate just to make it through another day. In the late 1990s, Lex's life took another turn. He began a relationship with Miss Elizabeth, the beloved former manager of Randy Macho Man Savage. Together, they seemed inseparable. But behind closed doors, the fairy tale was falling apart. In May 2003, tragedy struck. Miss Elizabeth was found lifeless in Lex's townhouse. The cause, a toxic mix of painkillers and vodka. The news shattered the wrestling world. May 1st, 2003, Miss Elizabeth dies. Lex Luger was arrested that night. Drugs were found in the house, anabolic steroids, painkillers, narcotics. The once heroic figure of the 90s was now the face of scandal and sorrow. He was released on bond, but the damage was done. The headlines were merciless, the fans heartbroken. For many, Lex Luger had officially fallen from grace. His reputation shattered. His career destroyed. His health collapsing. It seemed there was no way back for the man once called the total package. It's easy to glorify the rise, but it's in the fall where we see the truth of a man. Lex Luger had become a prisoner, not of fame, not of wrestling, but of himself. But sometimes, the lowest point becomes the beginning of change. Because even after losing everything, Lex Luger still had one thing left: time to make peace with himself. Next, the climax: pain, faith, and redemption. In the years that followed, Lex Luger disappeared from the spotlight. The world that once cheered his name had moved on, and he was left to face the silence of his own mistakes. 2003 to 2006, the lost years. He drifted between rehab centers, legal hearings, and failed attempts to rebuild. The body that once symbolized perfection was breaking down, piece by piece. In 2007, tragedy struck again. While traveling through an airport, Lex Luger suddenly collapsed. A spinal stroke left him paralyzed from the neck down. The total package was now completely broken. October 2007, spinal stroke. Doctors said he might never walk again. Many thought this was the final chapter, that Lex Luger, the man who once embodied strength, would live the rest of his life trapped inside his own body. But then, something changed. In the stillness of his suffering, Lex found something he had never truly known before: faith. A quiet voice inside him whispering that it wasn't over yet. Faith in the broken. Through years of therapy, faith, and forgiveness, Lex began to rebuild. Not the body that once won titles, but the soul that had been lost long ago. He began visiting schools, churches, and rehabilitation centers, sharing his story of pain and redemption. The man once called the narcissist now spoke about humility, gratitude, and grace. Lex Luger, motivational speaker, 2010, present. One of his closest friends, Sting, never gave up on him. It was Sting who helped guide Lex toward Christianity, reminding him that even broken people can find purpose again. He still lives with pain. He still carries regrets. But for the first time in his life, Lex Luger found something stronger than fame: peace within himself. Lex Luger's story isn't about perfection anymore. It's about imperfection and the courage to stand again, even when you can't walk. Next, the legacy: what Lex Luger taught the world. From stadium lights to hospital lights, from the roar of millions to the silence of regret, Lex Luger's story mirrors something deeper than wrestling. It's the story of a man who lost everything and found peace in nothingness. Lex Luger, 1986 to present. For years, Lex believed his worth came from strength, the body, the fame, the spotlight. But life showed him that real power doesn't come from muscle. It comes from the heart that survives after the body breaks. Today, he lives quietly, mentoring, praying, and reminding others that redemption is possible, even for those who've fallen the hardest. The ghosts of his past still visit. The pain of losing Elizabeth never fades. But instead of running from the shadows, Lex walks with them, hand in hand with faith. Forgiveness is freedom. In the end, Lex Luger's legacy isn't about championships or muscles. It's about survival, the strength to rise after you've fallen, the courage to admit your failures, and the grace to keep going when no one's watching. The total package may have lost the spotlight, but he gained something far greater: a light within. Lex Luger, a story of faith, fall, and redemption. If this story moved you, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone else might need to hear that no fall is final, and no soul is beyond saving. Small Blue Diamond, subscribe for more true wrestling stories, real emotions.